All right, good morning, everybody. If you can hear me, we are now in the live event. We will get started in a few minutes. There's a few reminders on the screen, just that we are new to Microsoft Teams, so you might need to bear with us. This meeting is being recorded and will be posted on PCCD's website once it becomes available. Just a reminder that we can't hear you, and you are able to use the Q&A feature in Teams to be able to ask questions, and we will be stopping at 2 points in the presentation for questions. And I will most likely keep my video on until we get started, and then during the slide presentation, I'll probably turn my video off. I'm not sure if you are able to see me at this point, but just for internet, a stronger internet connection, I will probably turn my video off once we get started. This is very exciting. We're showing 42 attendees at this time. If you would, we are publishing some comments in the Q&A feature that you should be able to see. And we have a fantastic moderator who will be assisting with the Q&A process, who is a colleague of mine, Maddie Roman Scott. She's fantastic. So just offering everybody a welcome if you're signing in early with us, and just to note the details on the screen. We are all new to Microsoft Team live events, so we appreciate your patience as we use this as an experiment. As a reminder, this is getting recorded and we will be posting it on PCCD's website once it becomes available. Another reminder that we cannot hear you as an attendee. You will have to utilize the Q&A feature in the live event. And we will be stopping at 2 points in the presentation for a question and answer period. So a huge welcome to everybody. We're very excited about today to share some information with all of you and to answer any questions you may have. So a huge welcome to everybody. It is 11 o'clock. I'm gonna give it another few minutes or so before we start running through the presentation, but please note the comments on the slide in front of you, just reiterating that we are new to Microsoft Teams live events, so bear with us as we do this for the first time, and we really appreciate your patience. Another reminder that this meeting is being recorded and will be available after on PCCD's website as soon as we can get it up there. Another reminder that we cannot hear you as attendees. This is essentially like a TV broadcast, and you will have to utilize the Q&A feature in the live event, and we will be stopping at 2 points in the presentation in order to answer all the questions you may have. And I have other folks on the call with me today to be able to assist with that process. So just giving everybody a few minutes to be able to jump in.
like a TV broadcast.
Oh, I hear myself. So I do hear myself, so somehow that might need to get muted on someone's end. That seems to have gotten better. Thank you for doing that. So welcome. We are at 89 attendees. This is very exciting. If you're just joining us, I just want to point you to the notes on that initial slide that you should be able to see. We will get started in about 3 or so minutes. I want to give some people time to jump in. I know Microsoft Teams is new to a lot of folks, including us, especially the live events feature. So just want to give everybody some time to be able to get in before we get started. And again, just want to draw everyone's attention to the notes that are included on this current slide with just some important information about today. Like I said, we're new to Microsoft Teams. We appreciate your patience as we do this for the first time, which is very exciting. We've certainly learned a lot. This will be recorded and it will be available on PCCD's website. Just a reminder, again, we cannot hear you, but you are able to utilize the Q&A feature in the live event, and that we will be stopping at 2 clear points for questions. So I hope you guys can hear me. I will keep trying to speak because it seems like in some of our Q&A, a few folks are having issues hearing me. So please make sure to check your audio before we get started. And a fantastic and good morning to everybody. It was oddly just snowing here in central Pennsylvania. It does seem to have gotten sunny out, which is it's a beautiful sunny day here. Yes, can someone please reply or can enter into the Q&A feature that you guys can hear me, because we certainly want you guys to be able to hear the presenters. So let's see. Oh, awesome.
Can hear Zoe.
Sorry. Oh, fantastic. Yay. Yes. So if you are having audio issues, certainly check your computer. Check your computer settings. I know what happens to me sometimes is if I have my headset plugged in, sometimes the computer doesn't recognize that I did that, and I need to tell my computer, hey, I have a headset in. Oh, awesome. We're getting a lot of responses that you guys can hear me. That is fantastic. And very excited to have as many people that we have on the call today. We are currently looking at 111, which I feel like that's a magic number. That's exciting. Going to give people maybe 1 more minute, and then I would love to get started. Appreciate everybody sending in that they can hear me, because that is certainly an important feature of this. And we will be having a few other folks speak, so hopefully you guys are able to hear them as well. Again, it does look like someone said no sound and they lost it. It seems that other people are able to hear me, so if there is an audio issue, I encourage you to try to check your system. Not sure what the issue could be, but just make sure check the audio on your computer. And thank you so much, Maddie, for replying to the questions. The attendee link should, if you don't have Teams on your computer, you should be able to open it in a web browser. Wow, awesome. We're looking at 117 now. And just, I want to be mindful of everybody's time that has been able to join us up until this point. So I am going to jump in and get started, and I'm sorry that I've been so repetitive up until this point, but I am just going to reiterate some of the notes that are on this screen, and then we're just going to jump into the presentation. So as I've said a few times, we are new to the Teams live events. So we really appreciate your patience and understanding as we do our first one today. And we're very excited that you guys are here with us to help us practice and to learn some information about this funding opportunity. Another note that this is being recorded and it will be posted on PCCD's website once it becomes available. Another important thing to note is we cannot hear you. So as attendees, you cannot verbally speak to us. It is essentially like a TV broadcast, and you will have to utilize the Q&A feature in the live event. So I hope that is clear that of how to submit questions, and seems like that is because we've been getting some notes that people can hear me. And Maddie's doing a fantastic job of answering some of those questions as they come in. Another thing to note before we jump in is that we will be stopping at 2 clear points for questions. So you will notice the slide will say question and answer, and that's when we will start taking questions and answering all your questions. And another thing to note that this is your time to ask questions. That is the purpose of this webinar today. And yes, good questions. The slides will also be shared and they will be posted on the same location that the webinar will be provided on. So that is a good question. But one thing I wanted to note was definitely take the opportunity to ask as many questions as you can think of during this time, because after this webinar today, the questions will have to go through our formal question and answer process where you submit questions through our resource account, and I will provide that resource account at the end of the presentation. So without further delay, we're going to jump right in. So hopefully you guys are all here today for the Community Coalition Capacity Building funding opportunity. We're going to talk through some things today to provide some additional detail on what this is going to look like. And at this time, I do want to give all of our presenters on the call, if they can, because we have had some technical issues, to introduce themselves. And I'll start with myself. So my name is Zoe Miner. I am the program contact for this funding opportunity. I am a program analyst in the Office of Justice Programs in the Unit of Violence Prevention and Reduction. And I will let the other PCCD staff introduce themselves. If Maddie, you wouldn't mind going next, please.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you so much, Zoe, for allowing me to be a part of this amazing presentation. My name is Maddie Roman-Scott. I am a program analyst. I work very closely with Zoe, and I will be the moderator today. Thank you, Zoe.
Awesome. Thank you, Maddie. What about you, Jeff? Jeff.
Good. Good morning. Yeah, we have multiple Jeffs on the webinar today. Hi, I'm Jeff Colchin. I am a Deputy Director in the Office of Justice Programs at PCCD, and I head up our unit of prevention, both the Office of Gun Violence Prevention as well as the overall prevention initiatives for the agency.
Wonderful. And then I also want to let EPIS, our technical assistance partner who will be partnering with us on this initiative, to introduce themselves. If Roger, we can hear you next, please.
Hello, I'm Roger Spa. I'm the project manager on the evidence-based practices side of EPIS. Glad to meet you all online today.
And I'm going to try Phyllis to see if she is able to introduce herself.
Good morning, everybody. Phyllis Law. Again, as Zoe said, I'm glad to be here this morning. This is an exciting opportunity for everybody. I work with Roger and the rest of the team at EPIS, and excited to be here.
Awesome. Thank you, Phyllis. And Megan, if you were able to connect audio. Okay, what about you, Jeff?
Hello, everybody. My name is Jeff Hogan, and I'm a systems change specialist with EPIS, and I'm excited to be here with you today. And in a little bit, I'll tell you just a little bit about what we do at EPIS.
Awesome. Thank you, everybody. So now we're going to jump into what we're going to cover today. So we're going to give a quick overview of both PCCD and EPIS, discuss the purpose of the funding and just some funding announcement basics to just know before you apply, the long-term goals of this initiative, some definitions that are going to prove very helpful as you're completing the SurveyMonkey initial request. We're going to break for our Q&A period. So this is going to be the time that we're going to ask for you guys to submit your questions. And then after that, I will then go into some SurveyMonkey specifics, just some things that might help you as you are completing your initial request in SurveyMonkey. So for those of you that are unfamiliar with PCCD, this tells you a little bit about what we do. This slide provides our mission, our vision, and our statutory role. I will let you guys read the slide, and as I said, the slides will be available after the fact, so I'm not going to read this, but this is a very helpful slide just to give you an idea of what we do. And then to go more into detail about what we do, PCCD serves as the Justice Planning and Policymaking Agency for the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. And for the purpose of why we're here today, it is that grant piece. So you'll see that as the first bullet. We administer all types of grants, with this one focused on building community coalition capacity by helping communities to identify and address local problems using an early upstream evidence-based prevention approach. And with that said, I'm going to let Jeff speak to you a little bit more about how EPIS is going to be involved in this process and what they do. Oops, I went backwards. Sorry about that.
Thanks, Zoe. So EPIS stands for Evidence-Based Prevention and Intervention Support. EPIS is part of the Edna Bennett Pierce Prevention Research Center at Penn State. And the Prevention Research Center, or as you'll often hear it referred to as the PRC, is part of the Penn State College of Health and Human Development. If you can go to the next slide, Zoe.
Sure.
This slide's meant to serve as a graphic to show how it's not always easy to translate science and research into putting things in place in practice in your communities. And EPIS is here to help fill that role, as you can see kind of the walk from left to right on the screen, by providing you tools, resources, training, and technical assistance to help to get from translating science and research into practice. If we can go to our last slide for EPIS. I'll start with a graphic on the right, which may be small and hard to read for you, but it's really just meant to show the place that EPIS serves. At the top, we see policy makers and funders and community and program providers. And at the bottom, we see the researchers and the program developers. And EPIS kind of exists in this space between to bridge the gap between the two. If we can take that middle section from the graphic, it's expanded on the left of this slide. We can see the 5 cores of support that EPIS offers. The first of those being learning communities. And if you're not familiar with the term learning communities, sometimes that means that we're coming to you to teach you or train you on a specific topic. Sometimes it means bringing together folks who are doing similar work and having them share ideas. But most of the time, it's a combination of those two because we sometimes can learn from each other as well best. The second core is the implementation resources and trainings. The third core is data collection, evaluation tools, and processes. The fourth is the sustainability knowledge base. And the fifth is in-state infrastructures for evidence-based programs.
Awesome. Thank you, Jeff. And then on the next slide, I'm going to pass it over to Jeff.
All right, good morning. So the purpose of our solicitation is to really advance prevention initiatives throughout the Commonwealth. We recognize that there are a lot of communities that are looking to address locally identified problems and issues. And what we hope to do with this initiative is to bring some structure and some evidence-based practices and approaches to help you succeed in what you're trying to do. So there are four main areas that we want to work with you if you're selected as one of our initial cohort of sites to participate. To strengthen community action, to really help you coordinate and organize across your community, to identify using data and take action to address your local issues. to help you create safe and supportive environments, to build a area in your community that's safe for kids, families, and the overall community at large, to help you develop personal skills, to really help you understand the concepts of prevention and how you can get the biggest bang for the limited resources you do have and have a positive effect on your community and those that live in it. And then finally, building public policy to help you advance the work of your coalition, your community, and inform the policymakers both locally and at the state level to really help advance the idea of prevention. Getting upstream ahead of the curve, you'll hear that a number of times during this presentation, to really help you come up with ways to identify and address the problems locally that you can bring resources bear to address.
Great, thank you, Jeff. So now I just want to cover some of the funding announcement basics, which was included in the document that got disseminated, and that is also available on PCCD's website. But for those of you folks that maybe weren't able to reference that document, just wanted to go over some of those details here. So for the eligible applicants, only nonprofit organizations and units of local government in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania are eligible to apply as the sponsor agency. And I am going to go over in a few slides more information about what we mean by sponsor agency. The sponsor agency can apply on behalf of the coalition or community stakeholder group. And again, I'm going to talk a little bit more about what we mean by community stakeholder group and coalition. And coalitions can only apply as the applicant if they have a 501c3 designated status. The project period for this developmental phase is going to be 21 months with a start date of October 1st, 2021. And some budgetary information, the maximum budget that you can come in for is $150,000. An important requirement of this funding opportunity is that there is a full-time community coordinator or director is required. And final budgets will be determined with PCCD in the final application process. So we wanted to provide an idea of like what the short-term and long-term goals look like for this project. The short-term intent of this initiative is to support and build coalitions to address locally identified problems. And the longer-term goal is to engage those coalitions to support healthy youth development in their communities. PCCD strongly supports upstream early prevention rather than waiting for problems to develop. And so just to reiterate, for the long-term project goals of this process, it is going to be a multi-tiered, multi-phased approach to prevent problem behaviors. This will include the completion of a community needs assessment, a community resource assessment, strategic prevention plan, and community outreach. So as part of this process, we really want the agencies and the coalition to make data-driven decision-making. So what data and where do they get it? And that's where some of those things that I just spoke of will come into play. And additionally, as part of this process, we will be assisting with sustainability planning. So now our focus is going to be on the terminology that you're going to find in the SurveyMonkey initial request form. So like I said, I did speak about the coalition or the community stakeholder group. And that is a group of people that maybe your organization has partnered with for other projects or initiatives, or maybe your organization doesn't have a fully formed stakeholder group. So I just wanted to note that as part of this process, there does not have to be a fully formed coalition. The goal of this developmental process is to have the group, the stakeholder group, get to that point. And as I mentioned before, you're going to see the term sponsor agency throughout the SurveyMonkey initial request form. And that agency would be the recipient of the grant. They would most likely be the nonprofit or the unit of local government, and they will be agreeing to certain commitments that was provided on that document that I referenced. And then it'll also be presented as commitments in the SurveyMonkey initial request as well. They will have to agree to be the fiscal agent, and they are the most likely one to employ the coordinator or the director for this project. So just providing a little bit more information on some of the terms that you guys are going to see in the SurveyMonkey initial request. You're going to see the term community, which it can be kind of defined in a myriad of ways, right? It can be a geographic region. It can be the impact area. It could be the neighborhood, township, school districts. And it is up to the applicant to determine and define the community to be served through this project. Priority consideration will be given to non-county-wide collaboratives, as county collaboratives might be too big with the purpose of this funding opportunity. And as part of that definition of your community, you are going to have to speak to demographics. So demographics covers a variety of information, from income to crime level to race, age, education, and employment. So as part of the SurveyMonkey initial request, we're really looking for the applicant to have a good understanding of the makeup of their defined community. So this is probably the portion that everybody has been waiting for. This is our question and answer period of information that we've shared up until this point. And Maddie will be assisting me with that Q&A process. And again, I just want to reiterate that we are not able to interact with you vocally. You guys can only hear us. We can't hear you. So you will be needing to utilize that Q&A feature in the live event. So now is the time to ask your questions.
Great. Thank you, Zoe. So that was great information. So I do want to cover two questions. The first question was, will this Q&A from today be available online as well? So, Zoe.
Yes. So I'm really happy that you asked that. Our goal after today is to create a frequently asked questions section that we will provide on that website. And then I did want to note that after the webinar, there's still going to be that formal Q&A process, which I'll share more information about once we get to the end, just so you guys are aware of how to submit those questions after today. And PCCD has a designated site where we post funding announcement question and answers, and I'll also be able to provide that link as well.
Thank you. That's great information. So the next question is, where can we find this document? So I put a link to that section in our website. Are there other areas where folks, Zoe, can find this document that you're referring to?
Yes, so Maddie provided the correct link, and I'm pretty sure it's provided by it saying, like, you can find more information here. So on that site, it's not very lengthy, thankfully, but once you read through it, you'll see where it says more information can be found here. And once you click here, it should open to a PDF version that provides a little bit more information about the funding opportunity.
Great. Thanks, Zoe. So the next question is, do you have matching funds that are required for this request?
There will be no matching funds required for this.
Great. Thank you. How many grants will there be statewide, Zoe? Do we know?
Jeff, do you mind taking that one?
Yeah, this is Jeff Colchin again. We are anticipating a first cohort of approximately 5 sites for that $150,000 over the 21 months to receive the really intensive dedicated technical assistance from PCCD staff as well as the Epicenter. We will work very closely with the sites selected as part of the competitive process, but what we anticipate is that the rest of the people that are interested in and apply to this opportunity, we're going to give you the opportunity to ask for types of assistance that would be beneficial. For example, I need help recruiting stakeholders, or I'm not really familiar with how to go about the process of data collection and analysis. And what we'll do with PCCD and EPIS is work to provide some short webinars, kind of ongoing, more generalized technical assistance and training materials that'll be posted out on the EPIS website that everyone that's interested will be able to access, with the intent of really building your capacity on your own and starting this process with the hope that if we're successful with our initial cohort, we'd be able to add additional cohorts in the years to come. So as Zoe mentioned, this is kind of a pilot. This is our first attempt to really spread our reach, to get to communities that may not be familiar with PCCD and may not be that familiar with the whole concept of prevention, that are trying to do good work, really have an interest in helping their communities, but could use some structure and organizational skills that we hope to be able to provide. So that's kind of the long answer to a short question. Approximately 5 sites will receive the funding with the plans for expanding that in future years.
Great. So the next question, Jeff, I'm going to probably kick it to you as well. Could you describe some of what is meant by upstream?
Absolutely. I think too often prevention efforts wait till a problem already occurs. Trying to deal with issues in almost a catch-up manner, trying to chase your tail, as they say, and trying to change things after the problems have already ingrained themselves in a community. What we mean by upstream prevention is the concept of identifying why the problem behaviors occur. What is the reason for the problems that exist in your community? And one of the things that, as you go through this process, you'll learn about is the concept of risk and protective factors. Risk factors are situations or criteria that can increase the likelihood of problem behaviors occurring, and protective factors are situations or people in the community that can buffer how people are reacting when they are faced with those risk factors, how they respond to the risk that they're presented with. A lot of what we do at the Office of Justice Programs and the Unit of Prevention focuses on youth. Really, when we talk about upstream and early prevention, it's stopping kids from getting involved in situations and with people that can lead them down the path of problem behaviors. So that's kind of the approach that we take, is focusing on the underlying causes of problems rather than the problems themselves, using data to identify the risk and the protections that are available, work to strengthen those protections to help buffer the risk, to hopefully prevent the problems from occurring in the future. And really, as we talked about earlier, using data to drive the process from start to finish. It really never ends. The concept of prevention is a cyclical one. It's the old shampoo commercial of lather, rinse, repeat. You use data to identify the issues. You choose programs that have been proven effective to deal with the risk and protections that you need to address the problem that was identified. You collect data on the impact of that program, and then you kind of repeat the process on an ongoing basis. If you have success dealing with one issue, another issue may rise up. We often use the issue of drug abuse. If you think back to some of the issues of the 80s and 90s, we dealt with the crack epidemic, then leading into the methamphetamines, leading into synthetic marijuana, leading into opioids. And things change over time. So it's not a static approach to prevention that we champion here at PCCD and through the EPIS folks. It's an ongoing basis where we'll teach you how to really use your coalition, bring people to the table that can really impart change, but also have data that can contribute to the effort. We want to fully inform the effort. We want people in a community working together, kind of rowing in the same direction to really impart positive change. And as we say over and over, to make lives better for the kids, the families, the overall community, including the schools, including all the stakeholders that you bring to the table as part of this process.
Great, thank you, Jeff. So the next question is the budget of $150,000 for the whole organization or the project/program in the request? Zoe?
Sure. So I just want to make sure I'm understanding that question appropriately. The 150,000 is what will be awarded to an approved or an awarded grantee to utilize throughout the project period. So I hope that answers that question.
Okay, thanks, Zoe. So the next question is, when will the survey link for the application be available and when is it due? And then there's a third part to that question, which is the evidence-based approach, which I'm not sure if that was actually connected, but maybe the evidence-based approach was asking for a definition for the evidence-based approach. So first, when's it due and when's it available?
Awesome. So the goal is to have the survey link available tomorrow, April 23rd, and it will be due on May 24th, 2021, and those dates will be included on the slide that I have next, and then we will also provide that information on that Community Coalition webpage that we have on PCCD site. That is where the link will be available. And in addition to that, I do want to share that a PDF of the survey questions will be provided on the website, so you can prepare for the questions before you submit. And after this Q&A period, unless I'm asked, I'll talk a little bit more about some of the details of what we recommend you do to submit your SurveyMonkey initial request successfully.
Great, thank you, Zoe. So the evidence-based approach, I'm assuming that Nate was asking about the definition and asking us to describe that. So I'm not sure, Jeff, if you wanted to take that question.
Yeah, absolutely. By evidence-based approach, what we mean is supporting programs, policies, and practices that have been researched and shown to be effective, rather than just trying to do things that feel good, or that you may have seen a program at a conference or something and say, hey, let's try that. An evidence-based approach means going back to that data-driven selection of programs and evaluation of the work that you're doing. Collecting evidence as to the effectiveness of your efforts, but then also using that data to make adaptations and changes as you're going if the situation that you're facing changes as you're in the process. So that's kind of what we mean by evidence-based is selecting programs that have been researched and replicated in other parts of the country or in Pennsylvania, but then also relying on data to determine exactly the course of action you should take.
Great. Thank you so much, Jeff. The next question is, are school districts eligible to be the lead applicant? Jeff, did you want to take that one?
Sure. Yes, school districts would be able to be the lead applicant. However, it's important to remember this is a community-based approach. So if a school district does have does want to come in to be the lead applicant and house the community, we call it a mobilizer in some cases, but the person that's organizing the effort, if they want to house that person's employment, they can do so. But we'll look to the school districts to be part of the community, not a standalone entity. This project is not meant to support programs or support general agency operations. It is really meant to fund a person to coordinate the process of building a coalition, bringing together the stakeholders, doing the data collection, doing the program selection and implementation. It's the organizational capacity. That's why we call it a capacity building project. So yes, a school district would be eligible, but we would definitely look for that in the application, the justification of how the school district would serve as the focal point for the community, not as a standalone entity.
Great. Thank you so much, Jeff. The next question is, are you looking to target communities with an increased racial and health inequities?
I can answer a piece of that, and Jeff, if you have anything to add, please do so. So for that, I'm going to just point to some of the questions that we're going to ask in the survey. So we will be asking the applicant to list and describe 3 to 5 problems that are currently being faced in your community, which could include all aspects: economics, health, social conditions, housing, infrastructure. youth issues. And then we'll be asking you to also share how those issues were determined, and then also how you would prioritize those problems as part of this project. And I did want to note that as shared in our announcement, we did say that priority consideration will be given to applicants that have never received a Communities That Care grant from PCCD, applicants interested in implementing C2C in a community that does not have an organized coalition, and applicants from regions in the state with significant violence-based need.
Great. Thank you so much, Zoe. So the next question you sort of kind of answered. Could this be used to support building a regional coalition of leaders from local coalitions?
I might ask Jeff if he could respond to that.
Yeah, sure. No, this is not meant to support a regional work. We are looking to strengthen local communities taking local action. Now, we do support the idea of partnerships and communities of practice, the idea of bringing together people doing this sort of prevention work from all over the state. We do, if you are involved in this, you'll learn that we have regional meetings that occur on a quarterly basis where all sorts of prevention practitioners come together to kind of share their successes, troubleshoot barriers, talk about ideas, experiences implementing different programs, all that sort of work. So we do believe in a regional support network. However, this funding is meant for local coalition building to really address locally identified problems, not on a regional basis.
Thanks, Jeff. The next question is, could the long-term goals of the funding stream align with social determinants of health framework? If yes, how?
So I'll take that. I think that was sort of related to how I answered another question. I really want to emphasize the fact that this is going to be, problems that are identified by you, by your community. And that as part of that community issues to be addressed, you can include that as part of your responses in your application.
Yeah, just real quick, I would offer the chance. Epis, do you have anything that you'd like to add around the social determinants of health? Jeff or Roger?
Well, I'm not Jeff or Roger, but this is Phyllis. I think
Thanks,
as far
Phyllis.
as, that's okay. I think that one of the things that is important that, as you're talking about your problem statement, it is going to be important that the social determinants of health, that as you're talking about that and as you're thinking about your problems and your issues, that you are thinking about these issues from a risk-focused approach, and thinking about the causes of the issues that you're having. So whether you are looking at the social determinants, whether, you're looking at the, and what data sources you're looking at, whether it's the PACE, whether it's, the data sources that are in those social determinants, I think it's going to be very, very important that you really provide for us a really good overview of that you have an understanding, or at least you've started to explore that understanding of what's causing those issues. As Jeff did a great job talking about earlier, that upstream understanding of what's, prevention, we know, and what prevention science tells us, we know we have to start and have an understanding of what's causing those problems. So I think from addressing the social determinants, we have to, have a broad understanding of what's causing the issues. But I do think it is important that when you're thinking about data, that we do have at least a foothold that utilizes a broad base of data. That does include the Pennsylvania Youth Survey, that includes, but can include, and we hope does include, those other data sources that are included with the social determinants of health. Jeff, does that, Jeff, does that kind of expand upon the answer?
Absolutely. I think that's a really good synopsis of it. Phyllis mentioned the Pennsylvania Youth Survey. If you're not familiar with that, That's a survey given to youth every other year in the fall of odd years to youth in 6th, 8th, 10th, and 12th grades. And it really is one of our foundational data sources that we use for prevention with our upstream prevention approach. It provides information on the risk and protections and really helps you in program selection. So as part of this process, we would work with sites to either analyze their PAYS data or to work with their local school districts if they're not participating to get them to participate in the Pennsylvania Youth Survey or the PAYS as part of this initiative.
Great. Thank you, Jeff and Phyllis. So the next question is there a way to determine if there is already an existing CTC organization in the area we are looking to serve?
Yeah, I'll flip it over to EPIS again, but they have information on their website if you want to talk about that.
Yeah, this is Jay, Jeff, and I think my thoughts were going where yours were. We have a pretty comprehensive list of communities that care sites in the state. Both we recognize there's a subset that had a CTC at one point and they're no longer inactive. We have those kind of categorized, as well as all of the ones that we know of as a kind of, I think it's pretty exhaustive list that are active. So yes, I think that we know of just about all of the ones in the state. I can't think of a reason that we wouldn't know about it because we provide the resources and training for those. So we have a map and we have a lot of those lists that we'll be able to cross-check for making sure that there's not a current CTC there.
Perfect. Jeff, would you be willing to put that link in the Q&A for me, if you wouldn't mind?
I will. I'm going to have to take a look because we just launched a new website at EPIS on April 1st, and I have to find it now. I'll do that.
Great. If not, we'll post it on the Q&A site. Okay, so I'm going to skip over is the school district a unit of local government question. The next question is from Tony. You indicate that a county may be too large to qualify as a community. My question is, can a sheriff's office qualify as a sponsor agency?
Yeah, this is GJF again. I'll take that one. Yes, the sheriff's office as a unit of local government could be considered the sponsor agency, but again, we're looking for a targeted approach. So if the sheriff's department, sheriff's office identified a specific part of their area served that they really wanted to focus on, a specific community, and wanted to hire the organizational person to work in that area, then that would be something that would be favorably considered. We would not look for a sheriff's office that serves the entire county. Again, what we're trying to do is to really make an impact on specific locally identified issues. And that's why we are kind of viewing a county as too large of an entity to work with through this capacity building. Obviously, in any county in the state, you're going to have a variety of different needs, different issues, different problems. So trying to do a one-size-fits-all for an entire county, really, we found not to be that effective. So we would look for local communities to really be the target of this initiative if you're selected, but with the idea that it could grow. If you have success in one community, maybe working through your county categoricals, your Department of Human Services, your juvenile probation, your children and youth, your mental health organizations, as well as your law enforcement, to take what was learned in a local community and make it writ large at the county level, using kind of some of the needs-based funds or other county level funds to spread what was learned to other communities within the state. And then going back to the question about the regional approach, having communities throughout a county come together, share ideas, figure out what works, what didn't, we're dealing with this issue. Well, so are we. Here's what we did about it. That's what we're looking to do. We're looking to build the lines of communication, but really the target of this is to get down to the local level to be able to have an impact to help the people in that locally defined community.
Great. Thanks, Jeff. The next question is, will funding be available for coalitions that are already established or just newly formed?
Sure. So I'll take that, and then I might ask Jeff to add. So coalitions that are already established can apply, but as I stated previously, priority consideration will be given to applicants that have never received a coalition-related grant or CTC-related grant from PCCD, and applicants interested in implementing CTC that does not have an organized coalition.
Great. And when is the application due? Oh, I'm sorry, Zoe, did you want someone else to chime in as well?
I don't know if Jeff had anything to add to that.
Yeah, it's we've talked a number of times about the communities of care model, which is kind of one of our foundational prevention approaches. It's a public health prevention approach that really is the foundation of that upstream prevention. We recognize that a number of our communities are dealing with other issues that may be focused on an older population, young adults, senior issues, whatever the case may be, that can benefit from this kind of capacity building organizational structure that that they may not be familiar with or may not have had success implementing in the past. But the longer term effort, we really believe that every coalition that's working in the Commonwealth needs to take into account the kids. If we don't work with the kids, we're kind of doomed to fall into the same traps that we have in the past, because the kids are going to repeat the cycle that their predecessors, that maybe adults engaged in problem behaviors, fell into because they didn't have the supports at an earlier age. So we will be providing our participating sites with information around communities of care with the intent of implementing the CTC concepts that Zoe talked about earlier, the risk and resource assessment, some of the other examples like that, as part of this overall initiative during the 21 months. Again, the EPIS website is a wonderful resource for kind of the history of what we've done, and then information about CTC and the PAYS, evidence-based programs, all the work that we've put into strengthening the work of prevention in Pennsylvania. We are very proud to be one of the strongest states in the nation around prevention, around working with kids to help head off problem behaviors, and around using data. So that's kind of what, if you apply and you're selected, that's kind of where we're going to want to go with this initiative. We'll meet you where you are and help you address the local problems that you're working with, but with the recognition that we want to really have you and your coalition members understand the need to get ahead of the curve and really focus on this upstream approach.
Great. Thank you so much. When is the application due?
Sure. So I'll reiterate that the application will be due on May 24th, 2021. And I do just want to add that we are answering questions as they come in. So if we have not gotten to your question yet, it is in the queue. So just wanted to at least share that if you haven't seen us respond to your question yet, that it is in the queue to be responded to.
Thank you so much. Let's see. Can the local unit of government subcontract to another agency to hire the full-time coordinator?
I think the answer to that would be no. The sponsor agency would need to employ the full-time coordinator director. Is that correct, Jeff?
Yeah, I mean, it would depend on the specific situation that you set up. I mean, if you have a municipality applying to be the applicant, but you wanted the person to be the person that's going to be coordinating the effort to be employed under a local nonprofit, we would take into consideration the approach that you're suggesting. But again, what we're looking for is the mobilization efforts. We are not looking to support overhead of agencies. We're not looking to provide funding for programs. This really is to provide a point person to be the organizing focal point to really build the coalition. They will be responsible for engaging and recruiting stakeholders, helping to coordinate meetings, being the point person to work with EPIS and PCCD. So we have structured, and you'll see this in the announcement when it comes out. We really want the funding to be dedicated towards the employment of this person, at least during this initial 21-month period. Obviously, if you want to have someone with a skill set to be able to do all these different facets, to be a public speaker, to be a recruiter, to be someone that has the writing capacity, to publish articles in the local newspaper or newsletters, all that sort of skill set requires a pretty good wage. We're not looking for someone at $7 an hour to be funded so that we can pay the overhead of an agency. So that's why we mentioned earlier that once we select the agencies to participate in this first cohort, you'll be working with PCCD to finalize and submit your budget. Contrary to most of the applications PCCD does, we're not asking you to provide a budget up front. We're looking for information about your effort, what problems you're trying to address, who is going to be on board, who's there already, who needs to be recruited, and just to show us that you have an understanding and a desire to really put your heart into this project and really be successful. Programs will come later on down the path.
Great. And 1 second. So the next question is, will the SurveyMonkey link be provided today? And Zoe, I'm not sure what time you were thinking of. If you wanted to pause here for questions, we do have several questions in the queue still. Some of them are repetitive, but I didn't know if you wanted to pause the questions here and then we would post the questions later if you wanted to keep going.
So we can keep, actually, why don't I'll jump to the next slide that just provides a little bit more information about the SurveyMonkey specifics. And then we do have time until 1 today to keep taking questions, but okay. It might help alleviate, we might be answering some questions with the next slide. So bear with us, folks. We'll certainly get to the rest of the questions as we can, if we can answer them all within the time that we have. And we do have time budgeted till 1, but just to maybe see if I can answer some of the questions that you guys might have in your minds, I'm gonna continue with some more information, excuse me, about the SurveyMonkey specifics.
All right, take it away, Zoe.
Thank you, Maddie. So as I've answered a few times, but happy to reiterate just for clarity, the SurveyMonkey initial request link will be provided on PCCD's website. That link is provided on the screen, and it was also shared in the Q&A feature. The SurveyMonkey initial request will be live tomorrow. My goal is to have it by noon, but I would just keep checking back sometime tomorrow. That is when the SurveyMonkey link will be available. And in addition to the SurveyMonkey link, there will also be a PDF version of the application questions that you can use. So again, just to reiterate the initial request period, goal is to have the SurveyMonkey link open and available for you folks tomorrow with the due date of May 24th, 2021. I did put an asterisk next to the next bullet because in order to make your initial request process as easy as possible, we are going to list some SurveyMonkey specifics that will just be helpful to note as you're completing your application. And we definitely recommend you download that PDF version of the application questions. Prepare separately. Maybe your organization likes to use Word, maybe your organization likes to use Google Docs. And would have you guys work collaboratively with whoever you need involved in the process to help answer the questions, and then submitting in one sitting, and maybe assigning one person to do that submission once you've had time to work on the questions together. And again, we will make these slides available on PCCD's website. So this slide just shares some SurveyMonkey tips, and I am going to read through them just to make sure they're clear, and then maybe add a few other details as I'm walking through them. So In our past experience with SurveyMonkey, you might want to check that your browser has its pop-up blocker off, because you will be clicking a link from PCCD's website to open into a new window to answer the questions in the survey. As you're working through the SurveyMonkey initial request, you must hit next in order to go to the next section in order for your information to be saved from the previous screen. So we got asked a few times previously about whether or not this has to be completed in one sitting. And although it does not need to be completed in one sitting, you must use the same browser and the same computer system. So to alleviate and avoid any complications related to that, again, I encourage you to download the questions, maybe prepare in a word processing application, Word, Google Docs, whatever your organization likes to use. Work collaboratively on those questions as needed, and then assigning one person to sit and actually do the SurveyMonkey submission. Another thing to note is there is a difference between eGrants and SurveyMonkey. So for this initial request, we will not be utilizing eGrants. And that's why it's important to give one person that submission responsibility, because unlike eGrants and SurveyMonkey, you can't have multiple people working on the application or the initial request at the same time. In eGrants, you can have that capability because people would have separate login information to be able to do that if they have the correct permissions. But in SurveyMonkey, you are not able to like share the link and have other folks work on it with you, which again is why we're recommending you download the questions, prepare, and then assign one person to submit. As you're walking through the SurveyMonkey questions, you'll see that there's going to be text boxes where you can write your responses. There is no character limit in comment boxes, and there's also no character counter. So you're not going to be able to count how many characters you've submitted into one text box. But I did want to note that you are able to expand or like click and make that little box bigger, because I know sometimes it can be hard to see everything that you've written, which again, helpful to type up in a separate document so you don't lose it, and then copying and pasting into those text boxes, and to make them a little bit bigger as you're reviewing before you hit submit. There is going to be a section in the SurveyMonkey application for an opportunity to include some attachments that would be relevant to your initial request, but there is a limit for the file attachments at 16 megabytes. A few other things to note, just once you're through the SurveyMonkey initial request, once you hit submit, you will not be able to edit your request. There's also no opportunity to review the application before submitting it, which again is why I've emphasized several times the importance of reviewing it and completing it in like a Word document or another word processing application. And another thing to note is you will not receive a confirmation email. You should get a screen that kind of says your response has been submitted, but you will not then receive a confirmation email that your SurveyMonkey initial request has been completed. But please know that once you hit that submit button, we have received your initial request. So this is the last slide that I have to present. I kind of alluded to it earlier. So this is going to be your opportunity to ask questions. We still have a lot of questions we want to get to in the queue, but once this webinar is over, you will have to submit questions about this funding announcement, this funding opportunity, to the following resource account, which you'll see on the right of your screen. And it's very helpful for you to include Community Coalition in the subject line so we know what funding opportunity your question is in reference to. Additionally, on the left, you will see that I provided a link to the Community Coalition page on PCCD's website. This is where you're going to find the PDF and the SurveyMonkey link tomorrow to be able to access that. And another thing we always love sharing, on the bottom right side of the screen, you'll see it says, make sure to sign up for grant opportunity notifications here. This is a great way to stay up to date on the funding announcements that PCCD offers as they become open. So with that said, I do want to thank you all for attending and for your time today, and we can jump back into answering some of the questions, Maddie.
Great, thank you so much. So we have a lot of questions to go over. Some of the questions were already asked and we provided a response. So I'm not sure how you want to handle those, but I do want to reiterate what Zoe said. Most of you or some of you are pretty familiar with our process, typical process. This is very different. So as Zoe said, I can't emphasize this enough. You will not be submitting an application in eGrants. I'm going to say that again. You will not be submitting an application in eGrants. You are going to SurveyMonkey. I just wanted to reiterate that because it is very different than what we typically do. We're very excited about this process, so we want to make sure that we emphasize that. Okay, so I'm going to skip, if that's okay, Zoe, I was going to skip over the school district question.
Yep.
And I was going to go next to Maggie's question, which is, are existing programs welcome to apply as well or only new initiatives?
Is the assumption that programs means existing coalitions?
I'm going to say yes to that. And then Maggie, if you're still on, just please clarify your question.
Yeah, and I think we did answer that as well. So I'd be happy to reiterate that current collaborations and initiatives can apply, but again, through the process, priority consideration will be given to those applicants that have never received a CTC or coalition related grant from PCCD, applicants interested in implementing CTC in a community that does not have an organized coalition, and applicants from regions in the state with significant violence-based need. So I hope that answers your question. But if not, please feel free to submit a clarifying question in the Q&A.
All right, thanks, Zoe.
I'm sorry. Sorry, this is Jeff. Just to kind of follow up on that a little bit, I definitely think I'm going to stop there. Zoe, I think you got it. Never mind.
Okay, thanks, Jeff.
All right, so the next question, is this grant opportunity available yearly? That's a great question.
I'm going to pass that to Jeff.
I think it depends on the success we have with our initial group of sites. Our executive director has really made a priority of reaching out to communities that could learn from all the work we've done around prevention. So I think that the more success we have, the more we can show the impact, the more that the initial cohort of sites are able to work and address the problem that they've identified, and really incorporate the ideas that we're trying to stress. Then our hope is yes, that we would be able to do this on an annual basis. We do that with a number of our prevention initiatives where we have overlapping projects. For example, we fund evidence-based programs for 2-year grants. We typically do that on an annual basis. So we have multiple cohorts of projects running simultaneously. This year, we did not release that funding announcement just because of the impact that the pandemic had on program delivery. I'm sure everyone in Pennsylvania, as well as nationwide, has been having to adapt the work that you do to the new reality that we've been facing working remotely, and trying to keep things going without having the ability to bring people together face to face and do the work as you typically do it. So yes, our hope is to do this on an annual basis. That's why we're referring to it as the first cohort of sites. As the head of our prevention initiatives, I will be advocating to our overall commission as well as our senior staff that this is a worthwhile endeavor. Whether you're trying to address gun violence or school dropout or teen pregnancy, whatever the case may be, the concepts that we will be teaching and providing information on for both the participating sites as well as through that resource repository I mentioned earlier. There's a lot of work we can do to strengthen prevention in Pennsylvania and really help the greatest number of kids and families as we can.
Thank you so much, Jeff, for that explanation. We don't have a crystal ball though, right? So I think it's always helpful to hear Jeff say, yeah, we're going to advocate for it. So I'm so excited to hear that. Thank you, Jeff.
The other thing that we always I always throw this in when I do these sorts of presentations, it also is kind of on the shoulders of the people doing the prevention.
Right.
To advocate for the importance of this sort of approach, for this funding to be included. It's all well and good to put a lot of money into the Department of Corrections and make sure that our communities are safe and protected. But a little bit of prevention goes a long way, as the old saying goes. An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. So we always want our partners that we work with to let their local politicians, their state level politicians, their national politicians to know about the importance of investing in prevention. It's all well and good to close the barn door after the horse is out, but if we can make sure that door stays shut and the problems don't occur in the first place, it's better off for everyone in the Commonwealth.
Thank you so much, and I love that analogy. I'm sorry,
and Jeff,
Phyllis?
can I just add one thing? This is Phyllis. I think that it's also really super important, and we cannot stress enough that we work with so many coalitions throughout the state, that just applying for funding, put your voice out there to show the need that you have. Just applying does that. And I think sometimes we really overlook that. And I think I cannot stress enough that we've worked with so many sites that are, I don't stand a chance. Everybody stands a chance. And I think even just taking the time to really get in and start to take a look at your community, and if you take a minute, if you will at least take a minute to consider this application, and it really speaks volume, and it helps everyone who can go back, and Jeff and his staff and everybody can help advocate. Just applying shows that need, and I cannot say that strongly enough. And really, just your application means everything. I cannot say that strongly enough.
And that's a wonderful point, right? Oftentimes, folks don't, exactly what you said. Folks kind of say, "Oh, there's going to be too many people. We're so small, this and that." But
Right.
Just the exercise of gathering that information and putting it together, it's a wonderful exercise. Like, hey, here's our data. Here's what we show what we need.
Exactly.
Even if you don't
Exactly.
get, funding or recommended for funding, you already have that information put together, and you have a group of stakeholders
Absolutely.
that were super excited about getting that information together. So that's a wonderful point. Thanks for bringing that up, Phyllis.
Sure.
Anyone else want to chime in?
No, I do just see a question that I just want to make sure we cover, Maddie, if you don't mind if I just speak to it now. The question is from Eileen, and it says, are there specific EBPs that you are looking for communities to provide? Are there approved EBPs that we'd be looking to be implemented? So I do want to stress that this is a developmental phase. This is a developmental phase funding grant to be able to provide communities with the skills that they need to build a coalition to be able to take action on some of the problems that you will identify in your application. But I did want to share that at the end of this developmental phase, organizations will be eligible to apply for an evidence-based practice implementation grant conditioned on the success of the planning grant and based on the available funding. So that would only apply to those organizations that are selected for this initial pilot go around. And then to address that activities question, there is that community coalition capacity building document that you will be able to find on the community coalition capacity building section on our webpage. Again, it's sort of hidden where it's that first paragraph on the page, and then it says more information can be found here. And that here is going to take you to a PDF that is going to answer some of the questions that you have around the activities that are expected. There's some definitions that are also provided, minimum considerations and coalition required activities, some long-term expectations, and then also it provides links to EPIS's website of where you can find some CTC resources. So I just wanted to make sure that we covered those two questions.
Thank you, Zoe, and I'm sorry if I missed those.
Oh, no problem.
Would the next question is, which you sort of answered, would the CTC solicitation come out after the 21 months?
Sure. So I think that did sort of answer this, where for those five folks that are approved and awarded under this funding solicitation, there will be the opportunity to to come in for an evidence-based practice implementation grant, again, conditioned on the success of the planning grant and based on the availability of funding.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, this is Jeff. Just to expand on that a little more, the link that Zoe mentioned on the bottom right-hand side of the page that you see, there's a number of funding opportunities that PCC puts out on an annual basis. So I think one of the things we're looking to do is to strengthen communities' ability to apply for that funding, to understand the concepts of using data to identify the risk, to more fully inform the problem you're trying to address, and then select approaches to that have been shown effective in doing that. One of the questions that Eileen had answered that Zoe did a good job of responding to, we're not looking for a top-down driven approach. We're looking for local communities to tell us what they need, and we'll help you figure out how to use your data to select programs that can help you address what you've identified. It may not be PCCD funding. It may be Department of Health funding or Department of Education or whatever your county funds, whatever priorities they have. But the idea is that we want to strengthen your approach, your stakeholder participation, and your use of data. Kind of improving your efforts. Everyone that's interested in this obviously has a desire to make their communities better. We want to help you do that. So that's kind of the intent of this, not to guide someone towards here are the 2 programs that PCC wants you to do, because they may not be appropriate for every community in the state.
Thank you so much for that. So the next question is, do you anticipate Family First Prevention Services Act dollars for prevention sustainability after the PCCD grant runs out? So once PA opts in to Family First.
To be determined. We are working closely with the Office of Children, Youth, and Families at DHS on the Families First. EPIS is a part of that as well. We're very grateful for their partnership and participation in those discussions. But again, going back to what I just said, I think if you're able to show the need and that the programs offered under Family First can address that need in your community, and you have the local buy-in and partnerships through your stakeholders, I think that opens up, that is a very good funding stream once those funds become available, once all the I's are dotted and T's are crossed, as they say, with the state and the feds with the Families First dollars.
Thank you so much, Jeff. That's a great response. So I think, Zoe, you answered this question already, and I think, Jeff, you did as well. So we can just skip over what kind of projects we're going to anticipate funding, if that's okay. How many? Is that okay, Zoe, or did you want to reiterate something?
Yeah, that's good, because I would say, I think we answered that like you said, and then just to point folks to that document that will give you a little bit more detail on the types of activities.
Perfect. Then someone here is asking about what we consider full-time hours. So how many hours must a community coordinator work to be considered full-time?
I think that depends on the local structure, but as I mentioned, we're looking for someone that's going to embrace this position and stay with the organization, stay with the initiative, stay with the project, not just for the 21 months, but hopefully in perpetuity. So it's going to be dependent upon how much time you need, but we would be looking for someone to have full-time hours and full-time benefits that can cause them cause you to be able to hire someone of high quality and have that person have the skill set that can meet the needs of the project, and then want to stay on and really drive the initiative.
Sounds good. Thank you so much.
Maddie, real quick, I think we skipped a couple that I think are important around the 1150 mark.
Oh.
I think I might have covered some of those, Jeff, but let me scroll up.
The activities expected required for the 150K.
I responded to that, Jeff.
Okay, great, thank you. And then did you hit the full 150 going to each of the 5?
I don't believe so, so we can certainly answer that. Yes, the 150 would go to each awarded applicant as a part of this process.
Thanks, Zoe. I just didn't want to skip over that.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Thank you, Jeff.
Yeah, I must not be seeing some of the questions. That's interesting. I see that thank you, Jeff Hogan put the list for the CTC. Thank you so much. The next question that I have on my list is, if you're already a PCCD grantee, should we not apply?
I think that depends what you're receiving funds to do. Yeah, if you're receiving funds for our community violence prevention or our gun violence prevention, and could really use assistance in your organizational capacity. How do you identify and bring additional stakeholders? How do you incorporate data into selecting evidence-based approaches and programs? Then we would encourage you to apply. Again, the idea is to raise the bar on what's going on in the state. What we're not looking to do is programs that have received funding to do this sort of coalition building in the past, either through PCCD or other sources. So, for example, if you're a drug-free communities, or if you're a strategic prevention framework from the federal SAMHSA agency, we would see that as having other alternative funding sources. So we would not prioritize you as part of this project. But if you're receiving a CVP, a community violence prevention grant, and you're kind of struggling to go through the process of building that capacity to really be successful, and think that this could help you organize your efforts and improve the use of those dollars that PCCD is giving you for that particular project, then absolutely, this will help you bring additional stakeholders to the table, and really help advance the work that you're doing. It's going to depend on how you provide the information in the application, but we're looking to really come up with communities that we can really strengthen their efforts and help them become successful.
Yeah, but I do want to add to that, Jeff, just to provide a little clarity on like how we're going to ask that. So like Jeff said, we definitely encourage you to come in to apply. And as part of the SurveyMonkey questions, we are going to ask if the sponsor agency or the coalition has ever received a grant from PCCD or even other sources of funding for coalition-related activities. And then if yes, to those questions, including the PCCD grant IDs, and then also how much you were awarded and how long ago. So you'll be able to see those types of the specific questions that we asked provided that we'll be able to provide tomorrow.
Alrighty, so thank you so much. I'm sorry.
Sorry, and I think one of the other key pieces here is also, this is also about when, in this idea of building capacity, and just to add on to what Jeff was saying, this is about bringing capacity to bring, increase people around your table, and really, the funding you've been given to, do the work you're doing within the community. But it is also very much around having a very strong focus around strategic planning, around planning for the future, around looking at how you're going to think forward and be really focused around that part of the work, and be very data driven and working in a space that maybe you've never done before as a coalition. And I think that, that's definitely something as you're thinking about what you've been funded to do maybe in the past, just to kind of think about that as you're thinking about it as a coalition. Is that safe to say, Jeff? Jeff?
I think that the strategic planning is a great way to phrase what we're doing, to really take a look at your efforts and see how they can be improved and become more successful.
Great. Okay. Just wanted to kind of put that out there just for the thinking for the group. Thanks.
All right. So the next couple of questions, it looks like we answered them already, Zoe. We can go through them, but I think you answered it. So full-time coordinator. Yeah. Will the state give access to a data collection system? And if not, will this funding cover the expense of implementing one? So
I feel like with that, it's not like a data collection like application. It's like delayed data collection processes and like assessments that if you are an awarded applicant, we'll be able to work with you in partnership with EPIS to work out like how that like how you're going to best be able to do that as part of the project process.
Great, thank you. So we already answered the question about the Survey Monkey questions. We already answered the question about the grant application. Can you apply if
Yes.
you already have a pending grant? The next question is, for a large city, would you recommend focusing on coalition building within a smaller quote unquote community like a neighborhood rather than citywide?
Sure. So I would say to that it is up to each applicant to clearly define the community to be served through their project. And Jeff, I don't know if you have anything to add to that, but I would just, it's incumbent on the applicant to determine what their community they'd like to serve and to be able to serve would be.
Yeah, I think that gets it, Zoe. I think it's the questions of the that'll be included in the application will help you kind of define that. Like I mentioned with a countywide initiative, if you're saying we're going to solve all the problems in the city of Philadelphia, we would have some doubt as to whether you're being realistic in the approach you're taking. Worthy goal, but kind of probably thinking a little bit too large to try to do that. If you wanted to target a specific neighborhood, using the Philadelphia example, a specific police district, a council region, whatever the case may be, or in other cities, a specific neighborhood that's dealing with a particular problem, that I think is a more effective approach. And this can really get you going. And like we've talked about throughout this entire webinar, it's not meant to be a once and done. We would look for you to pass on the lessons you've learned to your peers in that community, in the other parts of the municipality or the county, and really, say, hey, look, this approach works. We would encourage you to do it, and we can help provide, technical assistance on a peer-to-peer basis as well.
Okay, so thank you for that, Jeff and Zoe. So we already provided a link. There was a question in there about, is there information on currently functioning CTC sites across the Commonwealth? Hopefully you saw that link. If not, we'll add that to the Q&A. Some of these, again, are just same questions. Are there going to be specific evidence-based programs that can be selected? Again, I think we covered that, Zoe.
Mm-hmm.
The next one, can the full-time community coordinator role be filled by 2 or more part-time positions?
So I think Jeff answered this earlier, that I think it would depend on the specific structure of the sponsor agency or even the coalition and the local agency, but that we are really encouraging the hire of someone to who's passionate about this type of thing, that you would anticipate really sticking with the organization long term to be able to complete the tasks and activities that would be required as part of this process. So short answer is maybe. It depends, but I think we would really encourage a full-time community coordinator and not 2 or more part-time positions.
Great, thank you.
Yeah,
the next, go ahead.
Just to follow up on that, Zoe, I think that's absolutely right. One of the problems we've had in the past with coalitions that have not been successful is people that end up being dual-hatted and end up having to split their time between multiple initiatives. We're looking for someone to really drive this effort to build the coalition, to help do all the work that needs to be done. And it really should be a full-time person, unless you can explain how your approach would be more beneficial to the work you're trying to accomplish.
Thank you, Jeff. And I did want to add too that once you're awarded, if you are an awarded applicant as part of this process, you're not going to be hanging out there on your own. PCCD staff and EPIS staff will be dedicated to this project to help you through and complete all of the specific activities that will be required as part of this developmental grant.
All right, thank you so much, Jeff and Zoe. The next question is about a clearinghouse for evidence-based programs and what processes should we consider. again, I think, I don't know if this was before we started talking about the purposes of the funding, but there are several websites. Jeff, I don't know, and folks from EPIS, do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, I think that's getting a little ahead of the process here. We can provide information on websites. One of the prime ones we use is the Pew Foundation has one called the Results First Clearinghouse database, which compiles a list of evidence-based programs from multiple sources. I believe there's about 5 or 6 that they research and include information on in terms of the strength of the evidence behind the program, what risk factors they target, what the type of program it is. But again, we're not looking to fund programs through this. We're looking to help you identify and organize, clearly identify the problems you're trying to address, collect data on how to address that, and bring the people to the table that need to be there to have a positive impact. The programming comes later in this process.
Great, thank you. I think we answered the $150,000 question. We can reiterate that. That's for 21 months, correct, Zoe?
Yep, that's correct. That $150,000 budget will be the maximum amount for the 21-month project period. That's correct.
All right, the next question, thank you, Zoe. The next question is for Jeff. Our coalition has gone through the CTC process. We have since wrapped our arms around 2 neighboring school districts. I love just wrapping your arms around 2 school districts, that's awesome. And added school social work staff to our middle school. Can we apply here?
Again, we're not looking to fund expansions or continuations. What we're looking to do is to take organizations that really can use the foundational process building, capacity building, and learn from the lessons that we've kind of learned from ourselves in Pennsylvania going back to the mid-90s. So yes, you can apply, but priority will be given to those communities that really are starting out at a more basic level, not looking to expand to new jurisdictions.
Great, and I think your response answers the next few questions, which is, even though it is prioritized for new coalitions, but are existing coalitions able to apply? You answered that. Did I hear earlier that a countywide coalition would be too broad of a definition for a target community? I think you answered that earlier. I'm not sure if you want to get into if you want to respond to that again. And then the third one, did you say preferences given to organizations who have not been awarded PCCD grants before?
Yeah, and for that, I will add a little bit. I think we answered the other ones, Maddie. Thank you. That we say that priority consideration will be given to applicants that have never received a coalition related grant or CTC related grant. Like, we understand PCCD provides a lot of grant opportunities for different funding purposes. So we will be asking that question in your as part of the SurveyMonkey initial request. So it kind of depends. As I stated, the priority consideration will be given to applicants that have never received a coalition related grant or CTC related grant.
Great, thank you for clarifying that. And the next question is, how are you defining youth? Under 18 or something else?
I think historically for other funding announcements similar to this, we've said age 24 and under. Is that correct, Jeff? Or would you say that we leave that up to the applicant to define their community?
Yeah, typically it's going to be your definition of community. You hit it right in the head, Zoe. A lot of the work we do with prevention does deal with those formative years. From early school education, from even preschool education, with programs to help family functioning, through social emotional learning programs in early elementary, through drug and alcohol prevention in middle school, towards bullying and school climate efforts in high school. So a lot of the work we do does focus on the under 18 population, but it depends on the problem you're trying to address. If you're trying to address the issue of gun violence, and the target population is those early 20 youth, you can benefit from this approach. You can benefit from who's not at the table that needs to be there to help you succeed. Do you have folks that help deal with victims? Do you have folks that deal with trauma, providers that can help with mental health issues? Do you have the drug and alcohol folks at the table? If not, this process can help you identify those missing folks and bring them into the discussion, into the data analysis, and again working to kind of row in the same direction. So it depends. It's I always hate that when I ask a question like that, and how are you defining youth under 18, and I get the answer, it depends. But in this case, it really does, based on the demographics you provide and what you're trying to address.
Thank you, Jeff. And I think that highlights the strength of this process, right? You as the community get to define that, and that's not very often that we tell folks to do that. So this is very exciting. So thank you, Jeff. The next question that we have, does a coordinator or mobilizer need to be hired prior to applying for the grant? It's a good question.
No, they don't. They don't need to be hired prior to applying for this grant. I know what can happen is a lot of times organizations that come in, maybe they have a full-time staff that they think would be a great fit for this. It does not necessarily need to be a new hire. But again, the individual that would be identified will need to be dedicated to this process 100% FTE, full-time employment.
Great, thank you so much, Zoe. The next question is, what if our school district will not participate in the PAYS?
So as part of this initial request period, participating in PAYS is not a requirement, and I might have Jeff add to that response if he has anything else to add.
Yeah, Zoe hit on the head again. She's our project lead for a reason on this, I think. But it's not a requirement to.
Did we lose Jeff?
I know we might have lost Jeff.
Yep, I'm back. Sorry about that. I had a cat across the keyboard. Welcome to remote webinars 101, I guess. I was just going to say, PAYS is not a requirement, but we would work with the local coalition to help them understand the importance of the data, what's in the PAYS, and the fact that it's the only source of data that comes directly from our youth. And then we would help you work with your school districts to overcome any reticence in participating in the youth survey. One important thing to note with PAYS is that it's 100% paid for. PCCD, the Department of Education, the Department of Drug and Alcohol Programs will pay for the survey for any school district, private school, parochial school, charter school, or cyber school that wants to take it, and then provide the technical assistance afterwards to help them understand what their data is saying and how to act upon it. So there's value in it. Some school districts still have concerns. We can work with you on that, but I think that it's not an eliminating factor if you don't have PAYS data as part of the process.
Great, thank you so much, Jeff. The next question, I'm pretty sure both Zoe and Jeff had answered something similar regarding if you had a grant before. That might be a question that's in that Survey Monkey. So I don't know, Zoe, if you need to expand on that or if we're good to move on.
I'll be happy to answer that again. So we're going to ask that. The question says, has the sponsor agency and or the coalition ever received a grant from PCCD or other sources for coalition related activities? And then we'll ask questions around how long ago did you receive this funding? So it does not determine your eligibility, but it could potentially impact your priority consideration as part of the SurveyMonkey process.
Great, thank you so much. The next question is, when looking at the violence-based need of a community, how do you determine an area has this need, and has the geographic area of focus been predetermined by PCCD so we know what areas are eligible to apply? That's an interesting question, and it's a good question. I don't know.
Question.
Yep.
So
Jeff,
I'll answer.
Oh, go ahead.
I'll just answer as best I'm able to, and then Jeff will probably be able to provide more detail. It's not going to determine your eligibility. As I said, as long as you're an eligible applicant of how we described it previously, and even how we've answered some of the question below, we certainly encourage you folks to come in. And then I'll maybe ask Jeff to respond to the violence-based need piece.
Yeah, it's one of the things that PC tries to do. We are, as Zoe mentioned, the Justice Policy Coordinating Agency for the state. So if we're faced with 20 really good applications, and one of them is in an area that's an area of high crime and high violent crime, we typically use UCR data, Uniform Crime Report data, state police data for those areas of the state that do not have municipality that reports UCR, and then some other sources that really can help us highlight and target areas that we can have the greatest impact on violence. We're not solely limited to that, but that'll be one of our deciding factors that we'll use. So I would encourage you to, if your community has not looked at UCR data, which is available online, Uniform Crime Reports is what that stands for. That can help you do that. I believe PCCD will be having is in the process of developing some data resources that we hope to have up later this year that can provide that sort of information. We do not have it up right now. But it's up to you to really, as part of this process, kind of look at what your needs are and what data you have that you're already using that can highlight those needs. So it's not a clear-cut answer, but I think that's kind of about all we can say right now. It's going to depend on who comes in and the strength of the applications when we make that decision.
Yeah, and I want to piggyback on that if that's okay, Jeff, because I think it's related to the next 3 questions actually that we got, where they're asking for the ideal size of the community, the specific youth age group they should target, and what if their county is very rural and only has 1 town center. So I just want to emphasize the fact that it is up to each applicant to clearly define the community to be served through this project. So I wouldn't say that there's not something that's necessarily ideal, but it's up to the applicant to make the case for the specific target community that they wish to serve through this project.
Thank you. I was going to lump those questions together. That's a great response.
Awesome, Maddie.
Yeah. So the next question, again, I think some of these we're getting into the ones that we've sort of answered already. So are existing coalitions with no funding available to apply, even though priority will be given to new coalitions? We sort of answered that. I don't know if anybody wants to explain further.
Which question was that, Maddie? Sorry.
Oh wait, did I miss one? We already answered the pays. Are existing coalitions with no funding available to apply, even though priority will be given to new coalitions? So I guess what she's asking, if we're a current coalition, can they apply even though they don't have funding?
You can still apply, but again, we did speak to the priority consideration for really what we're looking for as part of this process.
Great, thanks. So the next question is, you've spoken a lot about CTC. While we don't have this, our area does have an effective system of care initiative. Is there any concern with areas with an organized system of care group?
No, I'll take that one. I think a systems of care is a good foundational structure that really can be built upon. What a systems of care group could do is use this process to expand the reach and the participation by other stakeholders that may not be part of that overall initiative. The only caveat I would put into that is that most often systems of care are a county-based approach. So you'd really need to target your the area and community that you want to impact as part of your application.
Great. The next question is, again, I think the next couple of questions saying, if a group is working together in a volunteer capacity without a paid mobilizer, would you consider this group an organized coalition?
So I think I'm going to take that by just pointing to what you guys will see tomorrow as part of the SurveyMonkey initial request question. So we will be asking questions around community stakeholders. So this doesn't necessarily need to be a defined and or organized coalition, but we will ask for who are the current stakeholders or partnership agencies that you currently work with. And then in addition to that, if there are other people or organizations that you feel like you might need as part of this collaboration effort, but maybe have had issues engaging in the past, and asking questions around that. So I hope that it sort of indirectly answers that question.
Thanks, Zoe. The next question is, where would organizations who have received DFC funding, which is drug-free communities, I'm assuming, but not CTC funding, be prioritized?
Again, we're looking for communities that have not gone through the coalition building process previously as our priority approach. DFC would have received funding to do that sort of organization and that strategic planning approach, much like CTC, just in a different approach, a different priority focused around drugs and alcohol rather than some of the other problem behaviors that CTC touches on. So it depends on your application. It depends, you know, what you're coming, you know, how you're going to describe the funding you've received in the past and the needs you have that this process can help you with.
Thanks, Jeff. So the next question, again, I think we've sort of answered this already. If we've been, if our community participated in this type of initiative in early 2000, would this move the community further down the priority list? So essentially, if they've received funding for this in the past, would they be considered for priority?
Again, we're not looking for continuation funding or to restart previous initiatives. We're looking for people that have really never gone through this process before.
Did you have something to add, Zoe? Sorry.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think like the answer to that is definitely what Jeff stated, but then also like it depends, right? Because as part of the SurveyMonkey initial request, like you can make the case maybe in your SurveyMonkey application based off the responses to the questions that we ask. But I think really emphasizing what Jeff stated.
Thank you so much. So I think this next question is in reference to the full-time mobilizer. Mm-hmm. Must they be an employee or can they be a third-party contractor? School districts would be hampered by collective bargaining and retirement contributions.
I think it's gonna depend on the approach. A third-party contractor can be problematic. We're not looking for a consultant to do this work. We're looking for someone that's completely vested in the effort, and again has the salary and benefits that can get someone that has the capabilities necessary to be successful. So I think that's up for the individual applicant to decide how best to structure that.
Great, thank you. So I think we answered the question about the 21, what happens after the 21-month period. The next two questions are about oversight. What type of oversight is given to the grant recipient community by EPIS and PCCD, which we sort of talked about, but we didn't really call it grant oversight, right?
Yeah, so I can maybe answer that hopefully more thoroughly. So if you are one of the awarded applicants, as part of this process, we'll be reaching out to you in June 2021 to work with you to complete a final, more robust application in PCCD's e-grant system, and then we'll move you through, you know, the approval process with, again, the project start date to be October 1. And as part of that, the applicant is then agreeing to work and commit to this process in partnership with both EPIS and PCCD. So I would say we would be with you throughout this process in a support capacity, but then also following along the same lines of the requirements that we have for our other grant funding opportunities. And we'll be providing those types of resources once we get to that stage. But I really want to emphasize the fact that PCCD and EPIS will be partners with you throughout this process and be providing not only oversight, but also support as part of this developmental phase.
Thank you. That was a great response to that question. So the next question, which we answered before, is will this presentation be available for review and to re-listen? Yes, this will be posted. Yeah. So the next question, I'm not sure if I'm clear on the question, but who decides who to hire for the local director? So I'm assuming they're talking about a mobilizer.
Yeah, so that's how I'm taking that question too. And I would say I think that would kind of depend on how you're coming in for the funding, and most likely would be, if you have a stakeholder group that's maybe not officially organized, or maybe you do have an officially organized coalition, that would be up to like each other, the sponsor agency or the coalition in partnership, but also mainly the sponsor agency because they are going to be the recipient of the grant.
Thank you. Anyone else need to add to that? I think you covered all the things for that one.
Can I just add a little bit to that?
Sure.
We have worked with coalitions where they're, ultimately, it really does depend on the situation. But you would also want, even though the sponsoring agency may hire that person, you would eventually want to have that coalition to have some input into that person and who they are and what their responsibilities are. So you would want, depending on the situation, you would want to have a little bit of buy-in and some oversight with the board and what that looks like. So while the hiring that part of it would be done by the agency, you would want to have a little bit of overlap with the actual coalition itself.
Thank you.
Just at least in practice. So, yeah.
Thanks, Phyllis. Thank you, Zoe. So the next question is about this project and whether we're funding this for a position. I'm sorry. This funding is for a position that will be sustained the following year by the community. So I don't know if you want to reiterate, because the next couple of questions, I think we either answered them already.
Yeah, some of them are repeating, which is strange, but I think you're doing a great job of making sure we address all of the questions. So I'll speak to that question where as part of the budget, you will be able to support that full-time position with the budget. And then we will be working with you, both EPIS and PCCD, depending again on like how the developmental phase grant works, because I mentioned but previously those awarded organizations will be eligible to apply for an evidence-based practice implementation grant conditioned on the success of the planning grant. And then as part of this developmental phase, we will be working with you on how to sustain that position even beyond the grant period.
Great. And I think that it's the same for the next couple of questions as far as we've answered them already, but this is a question about implementing programs, and Jeff did a really great job answering that question. You already answered the CTC if you had a CTC already. We've already answered that question. So somebody joined late, right? So when will the SurveyMonkey become available? I think it's tomorrow. If you want to go back a slide quick, Zoe, for that individual, hopefully they're still on. Same question. System of care. I feel like
I know a lot of them are repeating, which is so confusing.
Yeah, I'm looking at the volume space and how do you determine this area? We did that already. Can the grant be used for the full-time coordinator position?
We answered that. But yes, that is an eligible expense, yes.
Yeah, so rural county, did we answer this one already? I thought we did.
Rural county question. We did answer a similar question around that. And again, I just want to emphasize that we say that as it could potentially be too big, but it really could depend on like the makeup of your community and the makeup of your particular county. And it is incumbent on the applicant to define their target community to see if you could really make the case for that. So I don't want to use the term not allowed. I think it just can be dependent on the specific situation in that county or that local community for how you want to target this project.
Great, thank you. And I like when we always say you have to make the case, right? Make the case.
Right.
So that's wonderful. All right, and I'm pretty sure we did the volunteer capacity for the mobilizer.
And we also covered the activities, and I'd be happy to bring that up too. It's I've referenced that community coalition capacity building document that you can find on our webpage that provides more information about our activities.
I can pull that link up again because if folks, I'm not sure with live, right? If folks can go back to the questions, I think that's part of the problem.
Yeah.
Oops, there it is. There was a question about, are you looking for these younger audience or are you looking for these younger audiences, or can older demographics be targeted to help? That goes back to, right, looking at your data. So I don't know if we want to reiterate that and again, making the case. And the last, we covered these last two, am I correct? All right, I think we got through all of our questions. Can you believe it?
Yeah, I actually can't believe it, but I did want to, someone asked a few moments ago, what is the 21-month process? Please describe what that looks like. So again, I'm going to point everybody to that document. And a lot of it is going to be what we've described as part of this presentation. You're going to work very collaboratively with both PCCD and EPIS staff to be able to identify stakeholders throughout your community, collecting data, beginning to work with your school districts, and addressing the barriers to program implementation. So again, the goal of this funding is to build community coalition capacity to help communities identify and address local problems using evidence-based approaches. And part of that evidence-based approach is using pieces of the CTC model because as we've seen through experience that utilizing the CTC model can really help you address and prevent substance misuse, school dropout, delinquency, and violence among youth in Pennsylvania. So more information is provided in that document. And then there are also other CTC related resources that you can find on EPIS's website to get maybe a better idea of what this developmental phase is going to look like. But we will be working with you throughout this entire process because I know this will be this is probably a new process, maybe not for all of you, but for some of you and for some applicants that come in, this all might be completely new. So what I believe Jeff said earlier is we're really here to meet you where you're at and very excited about hopefully increasing your community's ability to take action on your local problems. And I think we did answer that question now. I've asked the question about the activities and the engagement, and I think we answered that now, Kim. And again, pointing you to that document that you can find on our website for more additional specifics on the activities that will take place, and as mentioned previously in this presentation as well.
So, and you bring up a really good point, Zoe, right? So if you have left this webinar live event and we are still kind of not really answering your questions, you can certainly submit to that email, which I can put it in the chat.
Yeah, so I'll bring that slide up again. Thank you, Maddie. Yeah, and really appreciate Maddie's support and assistance because as I'm sure you guys are aware, we get a lot of repeating questions and a lot of questions in when time came in. So we really did the best we could to answer all your questions during this time. And as Maddie reiterated, after this webinar, you will have to follow our formal Q&A process, and information on that is provided on the right side of your screen, where you will submit an email to that resource account that's listed there with Community Coalition in the subject line, and hopefully we can further answer your question if you feel like you have not received an answer to your question today.
Thank you for saying that, Zoe. And then we do not take phone calls about competitive solicitations. We still consider this a competitive solicitation, even though it's not in eGrants, right? You will be submitting your information through SurveyMonkey. It is a competitive solicitation. We have very strict rules and guidelines on answering questions. So yes, please submit your question.
Yeah, and just to add, PCCD staff cannot answer questions about specific proposals, but we will be answering best we can questions of clarity for this funding opportunity. So I think that answers your question, Kim, on how after this webinar you will be able to submit questions if you feel like we have not responded to them today.
Hey, Zoe, where will the question and answers be posted? Will they be on the Community Coalition funding page or on our standard Q&A page?
Yeah, thank you, Jeff. I think that's helpful to provide clarity on that. So after today, we received a lot of similar questions, and my goal is to create a frequently asked questions list that we will provide on the website you'll see on the left-hand side. So Maddie's provided that link also a few times during the Q&A process. It's going to be an FAQ on the Community Coalition funding website. But for those of you that are a little more unfamiliar with our process, as questions come in to that resource account, they then get posted to a specific website that PCCD utilizes for the question and answer process for funding announcements. So like as questions come in on that, they will get posted on that funding announcement Q&A website for PCCD. And if we start getting enough questions that are similar, I'm going to be adding to that FAQ on the Community Coalition funding as questions come in.
Great, thanks, Zoe. And we did get a question about a job description for mobilizers. I'm wondering if there's something already on the EPIS website.
Yeah, I think the EPIS resources would be really helpful to provide that type of information.
I do think that we either have that or there is one through the formal CTC materials that we can pull from.
Perfect. Thank you, Jeff. And it looks like we have 4 more minutes. So you have 4 more minutes to ask your questions. We do have around 50 individuals still on. So thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you so much for your time. And we really hope that this Q&A webinar was helpful as you move forward with submitting a response to the SurveyMonkey initial request. And again, just to reiterate, that should be available live on our website, that Community Coalition Funding website tomorrow, with a PDF version of the survey questions available as well. And again, since we have 3 more minutes, I'm going to reiterate that the slides will also be available as I'm able to post them as soon as possible on that same website, and the recorded link of this webinar as well will be on that same website, which is on the left-hand side of your screen if you're still with us.
So I'm going to try to find, here it is. So I'm going to post Jeff's response, if I can figure out, there we go, really quickly before we go, because Kim had asked where you find the website.
Good questions, Kim.
Yeah, so I just posted the link to the CTC in there. That's the where to find my local CTC, or where, I'm assuming, Jeff, help me out here. But in there should be a specific section. We will probably add a link to that section if we could, if there is such a thing. But I'm pretty sure that with the CTC, the EPIS website does have some resources on mobilizer job descriptions.
Yeah, maybe we can provide that. Let me.
Yeah, that list is broken out by county too, to help you locate where you're at a little bit quicker.
Okay.
Jeff, are you able to provide that link in a reply to Kim, or is that what you just did, Maddie? I'm sorry.
I just did that. That has like where's my local CTC
okay, great.
coalition, but not the mobilizer job description, I think is what she was looking for.
Yeah.
So you want to add that to the FAQ, some of the resources on EPIS's site and link?
Yep, definitely will. And it is included on that document that I keep referencing, that Community Coalition Capacity Building document. There's links specifically to show you and to answer the questions. Hey, what is Communities That Care? What are the CTC phases, and what are the Communities That Care implementation tools? But I will certainly add that to the FAQ on the Community Coalition funding page on PCCD's website.
So I just posted, I know 1 minute left, no pressure, right? I put the exact link. There's a PDF of an example of a mobilizer job description on EPIS's website. Just found that.
Oh, awesome, Maddie. Thank you.
Yep. Kim, I just put it on there. You just asked the question. It's in there. Please check it out. Copy and paste that link if you can really quickly. I don't know. This is the first time we've done live, so I don't know what happens at exactly 1. Like, does it shut down? We don't know.
Well, I think I have to add it, but I'm going to respond. Maddie, you did put that in there, but I just responded directly to Kim so she can access that link. So hopefully, Kim, you see that before we end this presentation in about 1 minute or so.
All right, we still have 40 individuals on. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you to Zoe. Thank you to Jeff. Thank you to the other Jeff. Thanks to Roger. Thanks to Phyllis. Thank you all. We appreciate you taking some time with us and sharing space with us. Zoe, thank you for allowing me to be a moderator for the very first time ever. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for your assistant, Maddie. And I just want to reiterate what Maddie said. Thank you all so much for your time. And again, we really hope that this webinar Q&A was helpful for you guys. So take care.
Bye,
I'm
everybody.
gonna end the live.